The call came on a Wednesday afternoon while I was sitting at my desk reviewing patient billing files at the clinic where I worked as a medical records coordinator. My phone buzzed with an unknown number, and something made me answer it instead of letting it go to voicemail the way I usually did. "Good afternoon, may I speak with Adrian Osei?" The voice was professional, unhurried, the kind of voice that belonged to someone trained to deliver bad news without flinching. "Speaking," I said. "This is Landmark Business Bank calling regarding a commercial loan account in your name. The account is currently 6 to 7 days past due, and we're reaching out before it enters formal default status." I set my pen down slowly. "I'm sorry. What loan?" "The commercial loan opened in your name approximately 18 months ago, Mr. Osei. Original amount, $38,000. "I have never applied for a business loan," I said. "Not once in my life." There was a brief pause. "Sir, the application was submitted with your full legal name, your date of birth, and your social security number." Everything in the room went very still. "Can you hold for one moment?" I asked. I didn't wait for the answer. I just sat there, gripping the edge of my desk, feeling the floor shift beneath me. I left work an hour early that day. I told my supervisor it was a family matter, which turned out to be more accurate than I knew at the time. The moment I got home, I opened my laptop and pulled up my credit report. I had checked it about 8 months earlier when I was considering refinancing my car, and everything had been clean. Manageable. Ordinary. The kind of credit report that a careful person builds over years of paying bills on time and never borrowing more than they needed. What loaded on my screen that afternoon was nothing like that. There were 8 accounts I had never opened. 4 business loans from 3 different lenders. 2 business lines of credit. 1 business credit card with a balance of over $14,000. 1 equipment financing account. All of them approved. All of them carrying balances. All of them showing either missed payments or accounts already transferred to collections. The total combined debt sitting in my name was $112,000. I read the number 3 times. Then I read it a 4th time just to make sure I hadn't misread it. I scrolled through each account carefully. The oldest had been opened 22 months ago. The most recent, just 5 months back. And every single one listed a business address in the commercial district on the west side of the city. The same area where my younger brother, Kofi, had been operating his struggling construction supply company for the past 3 years. My hands went completely cold. I did not call Kofi that night. I needed to be careful. Kofi was charming in the way that some people are charming as a survival skill rather than a personality trait. He could talk himself out of almost anything with a laugh and a smooth explanation, and I had watched him do exactly that enough times to know that if I called him while I was still raw and shaking with what I had just seen, he would deny everything, buy himself time, and start covering his tracks before I had gathered a single piece of proof. So I waited 2 days. Then I called him the way I always did, easy and casual, the way brothers call each other on an ordinary Tuesday evening. "How is the business going?" I asked. He sighed in that theatrical way of his. "Man, it is rough out here. Suppliers want cash up front, clients delay payments, you know how it is. I'm juggling everything right now." "I heard financing is easier to get these days for small businesses," I said. "Loans are a trap," he said immediately, laughing. "Too much interest. I would rather find a silent investor." He laughed again. Relaxed and completely unbothered. My stomach tightened like a fist. After we hung up, I went back to my credit report and started a document on my laptop. I listed every account, every lender, every date, and every address. Then I stopped cold. 3 of the loan applications listed a commercial storage facility as the business premises. A facility I had visited exactly once, 2 years ago, when Kofi asked me to help him move equipment. Only Kofi would have known that address. I did not sleep well that night. I lay in the dark replaying every memory I had of Kofi and money, and there were more of those memories than I wanted to admit. There was the $1,500 I loaned him in 2020 to cover a supplier payment. He promised to repay it within 6 weeks. The money never came back. When I mentioned it 4 months later, he acted wounded, as if bringing it up was a personal attack. There was the time he borrowed my laptop for a work presentation and returned it 2 weeks later with business files saved on the desktop, files I had never created and never seen. There was the time he asked if he could use my home address temporarily for a business mailing because his office lease was switching over. I agreed. 3 months later, I started receiving letters addressed to a company name I did not recognize. Looking back now, with the credit report burning a hole in my memory, I could see what I had refused to see while it was happening. Kofi had always treated the resources of people close to him as available to him by default. Not stolen. Just borrowed without asking. Used without explanation. Returned without accountability. He had been practicing this his entire adult life. And now he had taken it to a level I never imagined possible. He had not borrowed something from me. He had become me on paper, signed my name, used my identity, and walked into over $100,000 in loans I would be legally responsible for. I sat in the dark of my bedroom and felt something shift permanently inside me. This was not carelessness. This was not desperation without a plan. This was deliberate, calculated, and premeditated identity fraud. Committed by the person who called me his big brother every time we spoke. The morning after that sleepless night, I called Landmark Business Bank back and asked to speak with their fraud department. I explained clearly that I had not authorized any loan in my name and had no knowledge of the account until their call 2 days earlier. They were careful and polite. They told me to file a formal dispute and provide documentation proving I had not opened the account. I also contacted the other lenders listed on my credit report. 2 of them were cooperative immediately. A third, a lender called Crestfield Capital, informed me that the loan in my name was already with a collections agency and that legal recovery proceedings were being considered. I asked Landmark and one of the cooperative lenders for full transaction histories on the accounts. Both sent me detailed records within 3 business days. I printed everything out and laid it across my dining table like evidence in a case. Every single transfer from those loan accounts went to one of 2 destinations. The first was a supplier called Brinkstone Building Materials. The second was a business account registered to Kofi Osei Construction and Supply LLC. Both names were familiar. Kofi had mentioned Brinkstone by name before, complaining about their payment terms at a family gathering nearly 2 years ago. The money trail was not complicated. It was not hidden behind layers of shell companies or complex financial structures. It was sitting right there in plain black and white, moving directly from accounts in my name into my brother's failing business. He had done this 6 separate times across 4 different lenders, and he had told no one. Not our parents. Not our sister Abina. Not me. Sunday dinners at our parents' house had been a weekly tradition for as long as I could remember. Our mother, Mama Amma, cooked for most of Saturday afternoon and all of Sunday morning. Our father, Papa Kweku, sat at the head of the table and led the conversation the way he always had, with quiet authority and genuine warmth. Kofi, Abina, and I had grown up around that table, and none of us had ever fully outgrown the pull of it. I arrived early that Sunday to help set up, the way I usually did. Kofi arrived 20 minutes late, the way he always did, carrying a box of expensive pastries from a bakery near his office and filling the doorway with his laugh before he even stepped inside. "Business is picking up," he announced to the room. "New project coming in next quarter. Significant contract. Things are turning around." Mama Amma smiled at him from the kitchen doorway. "God is good," she said. Papa Kweku nodded with visible satisfaction. "That is what I like to hear. A man who keeps pushing." I passed the serving bowl and said absolutely nothing. Kofi talked through most of dinner. New equipment he was planning to purchase. 2 new workers he was thinking of hiring. A commercial project that would establish his company's reputation properly. I watched his face across the table the entire time. He never looked at me with guilt. Never hesitated. Never let a single shadow cross his expression. He sat at that table, accepting our parents' praise, performing the role of the hard-working younger brother making his way, while 4 lenders in the city were trying to collect debts in my name that I never agreed to carry. Near the end of the meal, Papa Kweku raised his glass of water toward Kofi. "To the entrepreneur," he said warmly. Everyone raised their glass. I raised mine too, and kept my face completely still. I drove home from that dinner feeling something I had not expected. Not just anger, though the anger was real and it ran deep. What I felt underneath the anger was shame, and I hated that I felt it, because I had done nothing wrong. But that is what this kind of betrayal does. It makes the person who was wronged feel foolish for having trusted in the first place. My credit score had dropped 163 points. I had checked it again that morning before leaving for my parents' house. The missed payments and collections account were already dragging it down, and it would only get worse if I did not act quickly. A credit score at that level would affect everything. Mortgage applications, car financing, even some employment background checks. I was 34 years old. I had spent a decade building a clean financial record because I had specific plans for my future. I wanted to buy a home by the time I was 37. I wanted to be in a financial position where I had options. Kofi had erased years of that work without a second thought. I thought about calling the police that night. I thought about going directly to my parents and telling them everything before I had gathered more proof. Both times I stopped myself. Because I knew what would happen without solid evidence. Kofi would deny it. He would cry, probably. He would talk about his struggles, his pressure, his good intentions. And our parents, who loved him the way parents love a child they have always worried about, would be caught between us with nothing concrete to anchor them to the truth. I needed something unbreakable. I needed a professional. I found Mr. Boateng through a referral from a colleague at the clinic. Her name was Priya, and she had used him 2 years earlier during a dispute involving fraudulent business accounts her former business partner had opened. She described him as thorough, discreet, and impossible to rattle. I called him on a Thursday morning and explained what I knew without giving him Kofi's name. He listened without interrupting, asked 4 precise questions, and told me he had worked on 11 family fraud cases in the past 3 years alone. We met the following Monday at a quiet cafe near his downtown office. Mr. Boateng was a compact, calm man in his early 60s. He wore a plain charcoal suit and carried a leather briefcase that looked like it had survived decades of use. He set his reading glasses on his nose and went through every document I brought him without speaking for nearly 20 minutes while I drank my coffee and tried not to watch the clock. Finally he looked up. "This is a well-constructed trail," he said. "Whoever did this was methodical. But they were not careful enough about the digital footprints. Can you build a complete case?" I asked. "Yes," he said simply. He named his fee, his timeline, and his terms of confidentiality. I agreed to all 3 without negotiating. "One condition," I said before we finished. "He cannot know anything is happening until I am ready." Mr. Boateng closed his briefcase. "They never do," he said. 9 days after our meeting, Mr. Boateng called me and asked me to come to his office the following morning. I arrived before 8 o'clock. He had printed everything and organized it into a black folder with labeled sections separated by color-coded tabs. What he had found went significantly beyond what I had already uncovered on my own. In addition to the 6 loan accounts I knew about, he had identified 2 additional credit accounts in my name that had been reported to a different credit bureau than the one I had initially checked. One of those accounts had been used to purchase construction equipment. The other had been used to pay monthly rent on a commercial storage space registered to Kofi's business. More than that, Mr. Boateng had traced the digital submission records. Every loan application had been filed online from an IP address that mapped directly to Kofi's business office location. The applications were submitted on weekday mornings between 9 and 11, during normal business hours. The supporting documents used in each application, including pay stubs, employment verification letters, and income records, had all been digitally altered. My real employment details had been used as the foundation, but the income figures had been inflated to meet each lender's qualification requirements. The alterations were detectable under forensic document analysis. "This was not impulsive," Mr. Boateng said. "The document alterations alone required both access to your original paperwork and specific knowledge of what lenders look for." I felt a chill move through my chest that had nothing to do with the office temperature. "What do you recommend?" I asked. He folded his hands on the desk with the patience of a man who had delivered difficult news many times. Wait for the right moment, he said. Let the full picture speak for itself. I followed his advice and I waited. The hardest part was not staying silent with Kofi directly. The hardest part was attending the Sunday dinners. 3 weeks after meeting with Mr. Boateng, I sat at Mama Ama's table again. She had cooked jollof rice, fried plantain, and pepper soup, which under any other circumstances would have felt like comfort. That evening it felt like sitting in a courtroom where only I knew what the verdict was going to be. Kofi was in particularly good spirits. He had just signed what he described as a preliminary agreement with a property developer for a mid-sized commercial project. He was talking quickly, gesturing with his fork, leaning back in his chair with the ease of a man who believed every problem behind him was permanently behind him. The timing is perfect, he said. Everything I have been building is finally coming together. Abina smiled at him across the table. You never stop believing in yourself, she said. That is what I admire most. Papa Kweku nodded. Vision, he said. That separates a man. I chewed my food and watched Kofi accept all of it. The praise, the admiration, the warmth. He took it in with practiced humility, tilting his head slightly, waving off the compliments just enough to seem genuine. Adrian, you have been quiet, Mama Ama said suddenly, looking directly at me. I looked up and smiled. Long week at work, I said. I'm just tired. She patted my hand once. Rest well, my son. I nodded and went back to my food. I was not tired. I had never felt more awake in my life. 4 days after that dinner, Kofi called me. Brother, he said, warm and easy the way he always was when he wanted something. I need a small favor. My stomach pulled tight, but I kept my voice completely relaxed. What kind of favor? There is a short-term equipment lease I am trying to finalize, he said. The leasing company wants a co-signatory. Just a formality. 6 months and it comes off completely. Small amount. I let a pause sit between us just long enough to feel natural. When do you need it? End of the week would be ideal, he said. I would not ask if I had another option. I told him I would think about it. He thanked me warmly, said he would send over the paperwork, and hung up. I called Mr. Boateng before the hour was out. He told me to document the request carefully but to sign absolutely nothing. If he is asking for additional co-signatures, Mr. Boateng said, it means he is running out of options elsewhere. He may be attempting to create more formal liability under your name. Over the following 2 days, Kofi sent 3 follow-up text messages asking if I had reviewed the paperwork. He left 1 voicemail. I saved every single one. I created a folder on my phone labeled simply with the letter E. For evidence. What struck me most was not his persistence. It was his complete comfort. He asked me for this favor without a moment of hesitation, without a flicker of guilt, without any sign that he understood the scale of what he had already done to my life. That comfort told me everything about how long this had truly been going on. Mr. Boateng completed his final report exactly 14 days after our first meeting, which was the timeline he had originally promised. 12 fraudulent accounts in total. $112,600 in combined debt carrying my name. Every single account traced back to devices, IP addresses, and document submissions connected directly to Kofi or his business operations. The digital trail was extensive. The altered supporting documents contained metadata pointing to editing software installed on a computer registered to Kofi's business address. The loan applications contained browser session data that included an auto-login to an email account Kofi had used publicly for his business for over 2 years. The transaction record showed funds moving from accounts in my name into his business account within hours of each loan approval, in some cases within 45 minutes. And there was one detail Mr. Boateng had found that I had not anticipated. On 2 of the fraudulent accounts, Kofi had listed himself as the emergency contact. He had done it automatically, out of habit, the way people fill in their own information without thinking when a form asks for a secondary name. It was a small, careless mistake that placed him directly at the center of both accounts by his own hand. This evidence is strong enough to support a criminal complaint, Mr. Boateng said. Identity fraud at this scale carries serious legal consequences. I already knew that. What I had to decide now was the question of timing. Going to the police immediately meant Kofi would be arrested quietly, privately, without anyone in our family understanding what had actually happened or why. That was not what I wanted. I wanted my parents to see the truth. I wanted Abina to understand exactly what had been happening while Kofi stood at Sunday dinner and accepted their praise. I wanted the version of Kofi that lived in their minds, the brave young entrepreneur, the hard-working dreamer, to be replaced by something accurate. I picked up my phone and called Mr. Boateng. "Sunday," I said. "2 weeks from now." A short silence. Then, "Tell me what you need from me." The following Sunday I arrived at my parents' house and was quieter than usual. Abina noticed first. She pulled me into the kitchen while Mama Amma was arranging serving dishes and looked at me with the specific concern that older sisters carry like a second nature. "Are you okay?" she asked. "I am fine," I said. "Just thinking about some things." She studied my face for a moment the way she had always studied my face when she was not quite sure she believed me. "Work stress." "Something like that," I said. I gave her a brief smile and squeezed her arm. "Do not worry." During dinner, Mama Amma glanced at me more than once with that particular mother radar that never fully switches off regardless of how old her children become. I caught her watching me twice while passing food around the table, her expression somewhere between concern and patience. "Adrian seems far away today," she said to no one in particular. Papa Kweku looked at me with mild curiosity. "You are thinking hard about something." Kofi, sitting directly across from me, shrugged with complete ease. "Big brother just needs a holiday," he said, grinning. "You carry too much, Adrian." I looked at him across the table. "Maybe," I said. He laughed and reached for more plantain. Later, while I helped Mama Amma wash dishes, she touched my arm gently. "Your brother means well," she said softly. "He tries hard, even when things are difficult. Be patient with him." I looked at her for a moment. This woman who had raised both of us. Who still believed the best of her younger son because she had never been given a reason not to. "I'm patient, Mama," I said quietly. "I promise you that I am." The following Thursday, Abina called me in the early evening. "I heard something today," she said. "Someone at church mentioned that Kofi recently secured new financing for the business. Apparently he has been telling people the company is finally expanding properly." I sat up straighter on my couch. "Who told you?" "Brother Felix. He ran into Kofi after the midweek service. Said Kofi mentioned the funding came through last month and that he worked very hard to qualify." I said nothing for a moment. That same evening, just after 9 o'clock, an email arrived from Mr. Boateng. It was the final consolidated summary document, 12 pages, organized chronologically from the very first fraudulent account opened 22 months ago to the most recent one opened just 5 months back. Each page listed account details, approval dates, transfer amounts, and the digital evidence connecting each application to Kofi. The document was written in plain, precise language. No dramatic framing. No emotional coloring. Just facts arranged one after another in a sequence that told a story so clearly it needed no narrator. I read through it twice at my kitchen table with a glass of water going warm beside me. Then I opened my phone and called Mr. Boateng. "Sunday," I said. 2 weeks from today. Are you still available?" "I have kept the date clear," he said. "Good," I said. "It is time." A letter arrived from Crestfield Capital on Saturday morning. It informed me that the loan in my name was now 91 days past due. Crestfield had exhausted standard collection attempts and was proceeding to civil judgment recovery. If the outstanding balance was not addressed within 30 days, a court filing would begin. The amount listed at the bottom of the page was $31,400. I read the letter standing at my front door, still holding the stack of mail I had just collected from the box outside. Then I walked inside slowly, set everything else down on the counter, and held only that letter. $31,000. 91 days overdue. Heading toward a court judgment. In my name. I was 34 years old with no criminal record, No history of defaulting on anything, no pattern of financial irresponsibility. I had built my credit profile carefully over 10 years because I understood that financial stability was not given to people like me. It was constructed, slowly, through discipline and consistency and sacrifice. Kofi had walked through all of it in 22 months. Not because of a crisis I could understand. Not because of a hardship that left him no other choice. But because he needed money for his business and my name was available and he calculated that the risk to him was low enough to be worth taking. I put the letter in the folder with everything else. 1 week from Sunday, every document in that folder would have its turn. During the week leading up to the dinner, I made my preparations quietly and without rushing. I called Mr. Boateng and confirmed the plan in detail. He would arrive at my parents' house presented as a colleague of mine, a financial consultant I was bringing along to discuss something important after the meal. He had done similar things before. He told me that the key was always to let the documents do the work. Do not argue, he said. Do not explain yourself. Present the facts and let the room respond. I also spent time preparing myself emotionally, which took more effort than anything else on the list. I thought carefully about what this evening would do to my parents. Mama Amma had always carried a specific tenderness toward Kofi, the kind that mothers carry for the child they have always worried about most. Papa Kweku had said Kofi's name at Sunday dinners with a particular quiet pride for years. What was about to happen at that table would change something between them and their younger son in a way that could not be fully repaired. But I kept coming back to the letter from Crestfield Capital. I kept coming back to the $112,000. I kept coming back to the image of Kofi at last Sunday's dinner accepting praise while collection agencies worked on attaching judgments to my name. I texted Kofi on Saturday evening. Dinner tomorrow. I wrote. Of course, he replied within 2 minutes. Mama is making her groundnut soup. I put my phone face down on the table and went to bed. The following Sunday I arrived early, as I always did, and helped Papa Kweku carry extra chairs from the storage room off the kitchen. I brought a bottle of juice and placed it on the counter. I greeted Mama Amma with a long hug and helped her stir the pot. Everything looked exactly as it always did. Abina arrived next, then her husband Nana, then 2 cousins who joined occasionally. Kofi arrived last, 18 minutes late, carrying a bakery box, his cologne arriving in the doorway ahead of him. New contract confirmed this week, he announced as he set the box down. I'm telling you, next year this time we will be celebrating something major. He hugged Mama Amma, clasped Papa Kweku's shoulder, bumped my arm in the casual way we had always greeted each other, and sat down in his usual chair. We said grace. Food was served. Conversation moved the way it always moved at that table, comfortable and overlapping and warm. Kofi talked about the property developer, the project timeline, his plans for the company's fleet. He was animated and convincing. I watched Mama Amma's face soften with every sentence he spoke. 35 minutes into the meal, there was a quiet knock at the front door. I set down my fork and stood up. That will be my colleague, I said calmly. I invited him to join us this evening. I hope that is all right, Mama. She waved her hand generously. Of course. There is always enough. I walked to the door and opened it. Mr. Boateng stood on the step in his charcoal suit, briefcase in hand, reading glasses already in place. Good evening, he said quietly. Good evening, I replied. Please come in. I introduced Mr. Boateng simply as a financial consultant I worked with professionally. He greeted everyone at the table with courteous warmth, thanked Mama Amma for her hospitality, accepted a bowl of soup, and sat down in the chair I had placed at the corner of the table where he would have a clear line of sight to everyone in the room. Kofi studied him briefly the way Kofi always studied new people, measuring and categorizing, and then went back to eating. Small talk carried the table for another few minutes. Abina asked Mr. Boateng about his work. He gave a pleasant, vague answer about helping clients navigate financial and business disputes. Then, as the dinner pace began to slow and people leaned back in their chairs with the ease that comes after a good meal, I set down my fork and looked across the table. Kofi, I said, keeping my voice completely conversational. How is the relationship with Brinkstone Building Materials these days? Are they still your main supplier? He looked up. A pause so brief most people would have missed it entirely. They are fine, he said. Why? I came across a payment record recently, I said. Linked to their name. Fairly large amount. He tilted his head slightly. I have many payment records. That is how business works. Of course, I said pleasantly. This one was linked to a specific account. I was curious about it. Something shifted very slightly in his eyes. Not panic yet. Just the first arrival of caution. I think perhaps Mr. Boateng can explain it more clearly than I can, I said. Mr. Boateng opened his briefcase without any hurry. Mr. Boateng placed a single printed document on the table and slid it toward the center of the room where everyone could see it without straining. It was a loan agreement. A commercial loan in my name, issued by Landmark Business Bank, dated 22 months ago. This loan, Mr. Boateng began in his steady, measured voice, was opened using Adrian Osei's social security number, date of birth, and employment information. It was submitted as an online application. The funds, $38,000, were transferred to an account registered to Kofi Osei Construction and Supply LLC within 36 hours of approval. The table went completely silent. Mama Amma stared at the paper. Papa Kweku leaned forward slowly. Abina looked from the document to Kofi to me and back again. Kofi set down his spoon. What is this? His voice was steady, but the steadiness was constructed. Adrian, what is this? Let him finish, I said quietly. I'm not going to sit here while someone. Kofi. Papa Kweku's voice was very low and very final. Kofi stopped. Mr. Boateng slid a second document across the table. This is the second account. A business line of credit opened 4 months after the first. $22,000. Same social security number. Same applicant name. Funds again transferred to the same business account within hours of approval. He continued without pausing, laying each document down with the patience of someone who had done this before and understood that the most powerful thing evidence could do was simply exist without drama. Mr. Boateng worked through the documents one at a time. Each loan, each credit account, each transaction record. He explained the digital evidence in language clear enough for everyone at the table to follow without needing a financial background. The IP addresses. The browser session data. The document metadata pointing to software on a specific device at a specific office location. He was not theatrical about any of it. He simply presented each piece and moved to the next. Kofi tried to speak 3 times. The transfers could have gone to anyone. They went directly to your registered business account, Mr. Boateng said. IP addresses can be spoofed. The session data includes an active login to your business email, recorded during the same application window, Mr. Boateng replied. The documents were edited on a device registered to your commercial office address, 48 to 72 hours before each application was submitted, Mr. Boateng said. Each time, Kofi's response died before it could develop into anything. The room watched in complete silence. Abina had both hands flat on the table. Mama Amma had pressed her fingers over her mouth. Papa Kweku sat perfectly still with an expression I had never seen on his face before, something old and heavy and deeply pained. Kofi looked at me finally with something that was no longer smooth or casual. Why are you doing this? He said. Why all these questions, all these people, why here like this? I looked at him steadily. I'm not asking you any questions, I said. I have been listening. I had thought carefully about what I would say at the moment the room turned. I had rehearsed words at my kitchen table on 3 separate nights, standing alone in the quiet with the lights low, trying to find the right sentence for the most significant moment of this entire process. But when the moment actually arrived, I did not use any of those rehearsed lines. What came out was much simpler. I think it is better if someone explains this properly, I said. Instead of me. Mr. Boateng stood. He addressed the family directly now, no longer simply passing documents across the table. He summarized everything from the beginning. The first fraudulent account opened 22 months ago. The pattern that followed across 4 different lenders. The 8 accounts I knew about and the 4 additional accounts his investigation had uncovered. The digital fingerprints connecting every application to the same device and the same office location. The altered documents. The emergency contact listing that placed Kofi's own name inside 2 of the accounts by his own hand. He explained what identity fraud meant under the law. He explained what the consequences could include. Then he placed the final document on the table. The 12-page consolidated report with the complete chronological timeline. This report documents 12 fraudulent accounts totaling $112,600, all opened in Adrian Osei's name without his knowledge or consent, Mr. Boateng said. Every account is traceable. Every connection is documented. He did not say Kofi's name. He did not need to. Every person at the table was already looking at him. Mr. Boateng sat back down and folded his hands. The only sound in the room for several seconds was the refrigerator humming faintly from the kitchen. Then Kofi spoke. It is not what it looks like. His voice had changed completely. All the smoothness was gone. What was left underneath sounded much younger and much smaller. The business was going under. I was losing everything. I just needed time to turn it around. I was going to pay it all back. Every single cent. I had a plan. With what money? Abina asked. Her voice was not angry. It was the voice of someone genuinely trying to understand something that did not make sense to her. Once the new project came through. Kofi. Papa Kweku said his name once in a tone I had heard only a handful of times in my entire life. A tone that required no continuation. Kofi stopped. Papa Kweku turned to me. His eyes were tired in a way I had not seen before. How long have you known about this? About 6 weeks, I said. And you told no one. I needed everything documented first, I said. I needed it to be undeniable. Papa Kweku nodded slowly. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he turned back to Mr. Boateng. What is the damage to my son? To Adrian? Mr. Boateng answered clearly. The credit score drop. The collections proceedings. The court judgment being pursued by Crestfield Capital. The 7-year delinquency mark that would affect Adrian's financial profile if the accounts were not formally disputed and reversed. Mama Amma made a sound, very soft, that she caught quickly behind her fingers. Kofi put his face in both his hands. I'm sorry, Adrian, he said. The words came out muffled and broken. I did not respond. There was nothing useful to say yet. The table remained silent for a long, suspended moment. Kofi lifted his face eventually and looked around the table the way a person looks when they are hoping to find one sympathetic expression to anchor themselves to. Abina looked away. Mama Amma was staring at the tablecloth. Papa Kweku had not moved. I had a plan, Kofi said again, and the repetition made it worse, not better. The new contract was going to cover everything. I just needed the bridge to get there. Stop, Papa Kweku said. Kofi stopped. Mr. Boateng spoke carefully. I want to make certain the family has a complete picture of what we are dealing with, he said. What occurred here constitutes identity fraud. Using another person's identifying information to obtain credit or financing without their knowledge or consent is a criminal offense. The penalties at this level can include significant fines and imprisonment. Mama Amma inhaled sharply. Additionally, Mr. Boateng continued, the credit damage already recorded against Adrian will continue to worsen through active collections and potential court judgments unless formal legal dispute processes are initiated immediately and pursued fully. Kofi looked at me across the table. His eyes were red at the edges. Adrian, please. We are family. We can handle this without it going further. I will fix everything. I promise you I will fix it. I looked at him for a long moment. The same face that had sat across from me at this table every Sunday for years. The face that had laughed and borrowed and accepted praise and called me his big brother every time he needed something from me. We are family, I said quietly. That is exactly why I brought Mr. Boateng here tonight. Because I wanted our family to understand the truth. I did not want to carry it alone any longer. What followed was not dramatic. There was no shouting. No one threw anything or stormed out. What happened was quieter than that, and in many ways harder. Papa Kweku asked Kofi to stay after everyone else left. Abina hugged me at the door without many words, just a long, tight hug that said most of what needed to be said. Mama Amma held my face in both her hands for a moment before I left, the way she had done when I was a boy and something had hurt me that she could not fix. Outside, Mr. Boateng walked to his car and I followed. He handed me a second copy of the full report along with a set of formal dispute letters he had already drafted, one for each lender, supported by his forensic findings. File these Monday morning, he said. Each bank, the credit bureaus, and a police report to create an official record. With this level of documentation, lenders typically reverse fraudulent accounts and remove associated credit marks. The process takes time, but the outcome is strong. How long? I asked. 3 to 5 months for most of the accounts, he said. 1 or 2 may take longer. I thanked him. We shook hands. He drove away. I sat in my car outside my parents' house for a long time before starting the engine. Through the front window I could see the dining room lights still on. Papa Kweku and Kofi were still at the table. I did not feel victorious. I did not feel relieved in any clean or simple way. I felt the particular exhaustion of someone who has been holding something extremely heavy for a very long time and has finally, carefully, set it down. For months later, 10 of the 12 fraudulent accounts had been formally reversed. The remaining 2 were still under active dispute, but both lenders had suspended collection activity while the investigations proceeded. My credit score had recovered significantly from its lowest point and was climbing steadily back toward where it had been before any of this started. I had filed a police report. I had also submitted formal fraud complaints to 2 financial regulatory bodies. Whether those led to prosecution was now in the hands of people whose job it was to make that decision, and I had made peace with not controlling that outcome. Kofi did not come to Sunday dinners for several months. When he eventually returned, things at the table were different. He was quieter. He sat down without announcing anything. He left before dessert most weeks without making a reason out of it. I did not feel satisfaction watching him reduced. That was not what I had wanted. What I had wanted was the truth to be seen by the people who deserved to see it. And that had happened. Papa Kweku called me one evening and spoke for a long time. He said that what I had done, the patience, the documentation, the decision to present everything clearly rather than act from anger, had shown him something about the kind of man I had become. He said he was proud of me. He said it twice, which was not something Papa Kweku did easily. Mama Amma began calling me every Friday evening just to talk. Small things mostly. How the week had gone. What I had eaten. Whether I was taking care of myself. It was a small shift, but I felt it. I started looking at houses again. My financial advisor confirmed that my credit recovery was ahead of schedule and that a mortgage application in the coming months was entirely realistic. I had not done anything extraordinary. I had been patient. I had built the truth carefully instead of throwing pieces of it at people before it was complete. I had let the evidence speak when the time was right. And in the end, that had been enough.